we're gonna have one more supplementary. Let's do this. Let's get this done. It's the last, I believe, of the interview data I've got to. Assuming there's actually one more set of unknown man's journal, unidentified data 5. I'll dig that up at some point. But this will be the last set I do reading interview data. And we're starting with Die Hard Man. Locked in syndrome. Good. This is Die Hard Man 3 years ago at Bridges HQ. So, it's been decided that Amelie will lead the expedition. In terms of talent and temperament, it was only ever going to be her or Sam Strand, but we don't know where Sam is, which made the decision easy. Besides, there's no denying she's special. Amelie was born on the beach, or rather her physical body, her car, that was born into this world, while her spiritual essence, her car, was born on the beach. Medically speaking, they weren't sure what to call it. In the end, they settled on a diagnosis similar to what's known as locked-in syndrome, a condition where the subject is mentally present, but physically unable to move their body, except for their eyes sometimes. The President was able to communicate with Amelie's soul on the beach, but her body remained as it was when she was born. But after a time, thanks mainly due to the President's efforts, she began to show progress. Amelie's physical and spiritual selves gradually came together, and her body began to develop normally. It was right about then when they realized that she was also a dooms sufferer, and began to ascertain her incredible abilities. She can transport herself physically to her own beach. Guess it makes sense. That world is more real to her than this one. She must have overcome her initial struggles, but she still spent most of her life on the other side. And over there, time stands still, which is why even now she looks like she's in her 20s. Eventually, the President came to feel that her daughter had been through enough. From that point onward, all communication with Amelie would be via hologram. Even during the expedition, she wouldn't be in direct contact with most of the team. It's not a bad plan, to be fair. It'll help to keep her out of the reach of terrorists, for a start. That's presumably what they told Die Hard Man. I don't know how much of this is true. Because my understanding is, well, they're still calling the President's daughter. She's not quite. Well, she's not at all. Anyway, that was the understanding of who or what Amelie was 3 years ago. Alright, Dead Man. Human sacrifices under London Bridge. 6 months ago by Dead Man at Bridges HQ. Before I joined Bridges, I watched an old movie called My Fair Lady. It's about a flower girl, Eliza, a real cockney from old London. She meets this professor, and he trains her to speak and act like a high-class lady. Anyway, I heard that My Fair Lady might have something to do with London Bridge. You know the song, right? They all start out trying to build it back up with wood and clay, then they finish with gold and silver. There was a reading of the film that said Eliza symbolized the bridge, or something along those lines. But that reminds me of a far more sinister theory, that the Fair Lady in that song is actually an immurement. That the Fair Lady in that song is actually an immurement, a sacrifice buried alive in the foundations of the bridge to keep it standing. God only knows if there's any truth to it. Oh, and have you seen The Shape of Water? It's another movie with a heroine named Eliza, but this Eliza can't speak. She's mute. It's not about teaching the girl to behave properly, it's just a good old-fashioned love story. If you get the chance, you should definitely check it out. Yeah, okay. Hideo Kojima is just recommending movies he likes as well, which is fine. Okay, next one is Neanderthals Are Not Extinct by Hartman. 3 years ago at Bridges HQ. Both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens are believed to share a common ancestor in the form of Homo, not even going to try to pronounce that. But there are clear differences between the two. Neanderthals were brutish and brawny, well equipped to hunt larger animals and survive in colder climates, whereas Homo sapiens were slender-limbed and only capable of hunting smaller prey. But as millennia passed, Homo sapiens learned to create tools and hunt in packs. So I swear to God I've read somewhere that there is evidence now coming out that Neanderthals also had tools and some sophisticated development. The Neanderthals, who actually had larger brains than the Homo sapiens, also fashioned also fashioned tools of their own, but these were crude in comparison, and developed a little over 200,000 years ago. Perhaps because these simple-minded beings favoured small family units, so that even if a breakthrough occurred, it was unlikely to be shared with others. This isolation, more than any other factor, seems to have led to their decline. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, conceived religion, with which large numbers of individuals could be bound together in service to a common cause. Strength in numbers also made their communities more resistant to famine and other calamities. In other words, Homo sapiens grew stronger through interpersonal connections, by creating what came to be called society. If we persist in our divided state, we risk losing this hard-won unity and dooming ourselves to the Neanderthals' fate. We will dwindle and die, apart and alone. But history holds another intriguing lesson. Homo sapiens did not disdain Neanderthals. The two species even intermingled on occasion. Our DNA retains the vestiges of our ancient cousins even now. So you see, while a species itself may disappear, its genetic legacy may yet endure. Yeah, I think I mentioned that when I saw the title of that there is a small amount of our DNA that is from Neanderthals. Hartman's theory of evolution. 1 year ago at Hartman's lab. The evolution of life on Earth could be described as the evolution of consciousness. When the first vertebrates clambered out of the oceans and onto land, their consciousness expanded to process the new realm that lay before them. But their development did not end there. Their eyes moved from their flanks to their fronts, that they might comprehend the depth of the world. Mammals formed groups, increasing their chances of survival. Eventually they came together in communities, then larger societies. In order to preserve and maintain these structures, humans developed a perception of time, and in order for societies to outlast the lifespan of the individual, we conceived of an afterlife, and a future beyond ourselves. Alas, the death stranding threatens to undo all our progress. Consider the chiral network, which incorporates the beach, where time does not exist, or consider the timefall, which rapidly accelerates the degradation of that which it comes into contact with. How can our sense of time, honed over millions of years, remain intact when we must cope with such irrational phenomena? Yet, that is but the tip of the proverbial iceberg. We are growing apart, retreating into isolation, gradually losing our place within society. I would even go so far as to say that our conceptions of reality are under threat. How could they not be, when our very eyes deny the invisible BT that stands before us? The stranding has warped our consciousness in every sense. If the evolution of life on Earth is indeed akin to the evolution of consciousness, then what is happening now is undeniably a regression, is it not? There is one caveat, of course. Some of us are now far more aware of death than we ever were. This is what Dooms has given us. For me, therefore, Dooms is not merely a biological change. I prefer to think of it as the means by which I have achieved a new form of consciousness. Furthermore, I hope and believe that this new awareness of the other side is humanity's trump card as we seek to defeat the Death Stranding. Yes. There's a lot of... The way they're sort of framing division and the lack of interpersonal connections, which comes about in part due to... Which came about... Okay, so this came out in 2019, so this is pre-COVID, which has been noted by several people. But the idea that we are becoming more separate, more alone, due to the internet, due to the fact that virtual connections are now more convenient than physical connections, in many ways, it's a very prescient, I think, observation that's been made here. Not one that's unique, but one that is, I think, worth considering in detail about how actually we need to observe the function of the internet and how that might impact our development as a species. Who knows what a more and more virtual humanity will look like 100, 1,000, 10,000 years from now. Umbilical cords in Devonian-era fossils, 3 months ago at Hartman's lab, by Hartman, of course. An article from an old scientific journal was recently brought to my attention. It predates the Death Stranding and contains the discovery of a 380 million-year-old fossil, one from the Devonian era, to give the period its proper name. It was a fossil of a fish, and in its womb was a child connected to its mother by an umbilical cord, no less. The species? Metapisces attenboroughi, named undoubtedly after David Attenborough. I like that. It's a placoderm, an extinct class of armored marine creatures that used to live in the seas the world over. Unfortunately, most were wiped out during the Devonian era. Right around the time of the second of the Big Five, in fact. As you may be aware, the key foci of my research is the link between creatures with umbilical cords and mass extinctions. Once this area is connected to the chiral network, it is my hope that we will be able to piece together more data that will help us learn more about the link between umbilical cords and their stranding. Is that real? The umbilical cord of a 380 million year old fossil, is that a real thing? I've got to look that up. Because that'd be... I also sort of associate umbilical cords with mammals. But it's humans. Is it just humans? Actually, I'm trying to think of other mammals that have umbilical cords. I haven't actually... You know what? Weirdly enough, I don't associate it with, for instance, cat litters, which I have seen. But it's been a long time since I've seen a cat give birth. Bridgmanite in the Earth's mantle. Bridgmanite... Oh yeah, 1 year ago... I gotta read these out properly. Be holistic. Hartman 1 year ago at Hartman's lab. Bridgmanite is a mineral found in the lower part of the Earth's mantle. It was named in honor of Nobel Prize-winning physicist Percy William Bridgman. Bridgmanite comprises 38% of the Earth, but because it is only found deep beneath the surface, it is very difficult to acquire any samples for analysis. As luck would have it, however, a material with the same properties was discovered inside a meteorite. Before the Death Stranding, of course. Meaning that a certain amount of research has already been conducted into this mysterious mineral, after a fashion. From this, a theory has been advanced, positing that Bridgmanite contains a certain amount of corallium that was absorbed into the mineral at the moment of the Earth's creation. If this theory is true, it may go some way to explaining the curious tar that has been observed to bubble up from below the ground. Furthermore, if chiralium does indeed come from the other side, as we suspect, then it would follow that it has been linked to ours from the very beginning. In essence, the heart of the planet could be likened to the world of the dead. How appropriate, given that chiral clouds bind us to the surface forevermore. None may ascend to heaven when they die, for our final destination lies beneath our feet. Ashes to ashes, as they say. That's dark. That was a dark ending there, Hartman. About the Dreamcatcher. Hartman 1 year ago at Hartman's lab. There is a psychological framework which posits that the human personality is comprised of various strands. Our inner mind, our outer character, each is a strand or a thread made up of yet smaller threads which intertwine with others to make us who we are. And in nurturing each strand, we become better people and inure ourselves against psychological harm, or so the theory goes. As odd as it may sound, this is not entirely dissimilar concept to the one which lies behind that most ubiquitous of Ojibwe artifacts, the Dreamcatcher. You've seen them before, yes? A woven web of threads said to protect the mind from harm by trapping nightmares, thus ensuring that only pleasant dreams pass through. Now, I'm not, obviously I'm not American, I'm from Australia. I'd never even, heard of dream catchers until, they started to become... how common are they in America? Never once had been introduced to the concept up until a couple of games from about 2018 onwards. So in Red Dead Redemption 2, I know V's got one over her bed in Cyberpunk, and of course it's big in this game. I don't know what it is, but they've just been popping up all over my consciousness. It's no coincidence that these charms came to symbolize the Pan-Indian movement of the 20th century. The many and varied Native American tribes strove to set aside their differences in order to foster a group identity, a singular dream. As such, it came to symbolize what made them one people, what united them. In essence, strands can represent that which makes us who we are, that which differentiates us from what we are not, and the bonds we share with one another. But they're just not a thing over here. And I didn't know much about them, heard much about them at all up until a couple of years ago. Kipus, Hartman's lab 1 year ago. Kipu means knot in the Quechua language, so Peru, right? Objects given this name were used in ancient Incan society to record and transmit information. And yes, Amelie just so happens to wear one. The Inca would... Okay, so the Inca, which is around the Peru area, right? Am I right? I think I'm right about that. The Inca would pass quipu from one place to another via a network of messengers known as, if I get the pronunciation wrong, I'm sorry, Shazqui? I don't know if you pronounce the S there. You might be surprised at the complexity that can be communicated through a simple system of knots, and not merely numerical data. It is said that whole histories could be contained in these intricate webs. Yeah, it was like a... I've heard of this. I've heard of the writing system, the Incan writing system, which was based off of effectively knotting together coloured strands. And that's not really a writing system, but it's a language. Some theories suggest that they were ascribed magical properties, too. Certain combinations of knotted numbers were thought to encourage the dead to sleep peacefully in their graves, for example. Thus, we see that the quipu is at once a tool for communication, storytelling, and ritual. About Sam's return. Hartman 1 week after Sam's return at Bridges HQ. Sam has returned, safe and sound. It had been about a month since he departed for Amelie's Beach. 30 days of us has just happened. 30 days of relentlessly searching for us, though for him it must have felt like an eternity. I cannot imagine the isolation and despair he must have been forced to endure. It didn't seem like he endured that much. He seemed sort of to get over it pretty quickly. A suffering known only by Amelie and Bridget. Sam has told us about the Extinction Entity and how it granted humanity a reprieve, but beyond that, he is reluctant to speak, as per usual. Well, we shall not put any pressure on him. Frankly, I expect we would struggle to comprehend anything else he tells us. Suffice it to say that the last stranding has been avoided, even if its precursor has forever shaped our world. Thousands and thousands of years from now, should intelligent life walk the earth and find our fossils, they will likely conclude that Homo sapiens died out in the sixth extinction. Perhaps, if we are lucky, they may even find records we leave behind. Still, we cannot hope to guess how much they will understand about who we were. After all, their intelligence will not be like ours. Theirs will be a different understanding of the world, of the universe, different forms of existence, different conceptions of what is to be alive, excuse me. These invariably lead to different conceptions of what it is to die. But it matters not if they understand who we were. All that matters, in my opinion at least, is that they know we were here. That's a sentiment I can get behind there. Hartman. I like that. I like Hartman. Alright, we've got a bunch of interviews with Bridges staff, starting with the geologist. This is the geologist a year ago at the geologist's personal shelter. I remember it was just before I joined the expedition when I found those documents in Bridges HQ. Research papers that predated the Death Stranding. People used to believe that dinosaurs had gone extinct at the end of the Cretaceous period 65 million years ago. Well, non-avian dinosaurs went extinct, but there are still dinosaurs, birds, that walk the earth today. But when this fellow investigated various locations where late Cretaceous dino fossils had been found, he came to the startling conclusion that there was hardly any evidence anywhere on Earth that supported the theory that dinosaurs had survived until the end of the Cretaceous. In other words, almost all of them had been wiped out long before that. The only place where fossils did support the traditional theory was here, in North America, which suggested that this was the last part of Earth to have been inhabited by dinosaurs. Not everyone agreed with this analysis at the time, but let's say he had it right. That would mean that there is evidence of a mass extinction hidden here, right beneath our feet. Evidence which could prove invaluable in understanding the one on the horizon. Did the dinosaurs who happen to live here just get lucky? Or is there something special about this place that allowed them to survive? I'd love to get to the bottom of it, but I'm not sure I have what it takes. I'm not like Hartman, I don't have dooms or any other unique traits. Still, I want to make myself useful. I want to research the Stranding, help uncover the truth behind it. That's why I joined the expedition team, after all. I'm not sure about that. I was fairly certain there were dinosaurs both in South America and in Asia at the late Cretaceous, and specifically in the KT extinction. I'm sure I'm right on that. There would have had to have been some in South America, all the Americas, not just North, because they were still North and South America were still connected. So I don't see why. There's a possibility they might have been detached from Afro-Eurasia. Still, I'm fairly certain there were Cretaceous dinosaurs in Mongolia. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. I'm not a... I have a vague interest in dinosaurs, but I am by no means qualified to speak with any authority on the subject. It's just sort of... That vaguely sounds like something I've heard before. Also, there were, like, flying dinosaurs. It doesn't matter. Which weren't dinosaurs. Like, pterosaurs are not, strictly speaking, dinosaurs in the truest sense. The paleontologist. Interview with the paleontologist 1 year ago at the paleontologist's personal shelter. The paleontologists. That's a difficult word to say. In the period since the very first forms of life arose here on Earth, the planet has witnessed a number of mass extinctions, as you are no doubt aware. The most significant of these are known as the Big Five, which I've heard repeatedly now. The first marked the end of the Ordovician period, or Ordovician period, while the next at the end of the Devonian period, wiped out almost all marine life. But the third of these extinctions, the end of the Permian period, around 250 million years ago, was even worse. The worst. 96% of all marine organisms and 70% of land organisms died as a result, caused by a earthquake. A supervolcano, if I remember right. The fourth extinction finished off most large reptiles, and though the dinosaurs managed to hold on till the fifth came along at the end of the Cretaceous, that was the asteroid. 65 million years ago, we humans evolved from the small mammals which managed to survive that particular catastrophe. Each of these 5 extinctions resulted from enormous changes to the natural environment. Species which were unable to adapt to these changes perished, while those that were ideally suited to evolve and thrive did just that. Evidence from records which predate the Death Stranding indicate that many scholars believed a 6th mass extinction was on the way, or that it may already have begun. There was some consensus regarding to its cause as well, humanity's destruction of the environment. This led them to sound the alarm, warning the world of what was at stake. At the time, the greatest minds of the era believed that if the ecosystem could be preserved, and if humanity could learn to live in harmony with nature, then a future could be secured for all the world's species, humans included. But that was then, and this is now. If the phenomenon we are currently experiencing is indeed the 6th extinction, then it must be acknowledged that humanity is its main target. Is this divine punishment for our misdeeds? If so, then I suppose there is little that can be done. Perhaps there is no way forward for humanity now. Nevertheless, I refuse to give up. I will endeavour to find hope in our predicament. Yes, well, I'm not quite sure I'd say it was targeting anything. It was just a change in the environment. And humans are a very adaptable species. I don't think we'll go extinct anytime soon. Because it may get a bit tough in the real world. I mean, it's just hit summer here, where I live, and it's already blisteringly hot. Like, approaching 40s where I live, like, just after December has started. That's worrying me. I'm not looking forward to the next couple of decades. The Evo-Devo biologist interview. 1 year ago, personal shelter. I was born after the Death Stranding, so my conception of what the world was is derived entirely from documents, photographs, and videos. We didn't used to have timefall, for one, just regular rain. No chiral clouds, only the traditional masses of suspended moisture. And one certainly didn't have to worry about tar bubbling up from underground. In most locales. Humans could travel anywhere, even into space, though not very many of them, and we were blissfully aware of the beach's existence. We were blissfully unaware of the beach's existence. Suffice it to say, there was no doubt that this is a period of sweeping change that will have lasting repercussions for all life on Earth. Given that, dooms may simply be humanity's way of trying to adapt and survive. A beach exists within the consciousness of every individual, but these environmental changes, they affect all life on a genetic level, do they not? That's why I thought to investigate them, and the medium through which I choose to do so is the tar that has become so ubiquitous. But you're not interested in that, I'm sure. I'm actually interested in that. What is the tar? So, you know, there is a very real possibility that we have already failed to adapt to the 6th extinction. That we are but another evolutionary dead end, soon to be left behind. If that is the case, then it could be reason that one afflicted with dooms, and therefore blessed with an enhanced perception of the beach, are our successors who will survive and supplant us. I suppose that would be a shame, but it doesn't trouble me all that much. My research will survive me as well, and the Doom sufferers can pick up from where I left off. They will carry on my genetic lineage too, for that matter. What are you telling me there, erudite biologist? Okay. No, what worries me is not even Doom's will prove sufficient to endure this extinction. If that is the case, then humanity is doomed. I think she might be in genetic lineage in a broader sense, not her literal offspring. If that is the case, then humanity is doomed. It's certainly a possibility we have to acknowledge. But more than that, one question looms above all. Why? Why now? Why like this? That's what I want to know more than anything. Somehow I doubt the dinosaurs and all other species that came and went considered that question. Worrying over the reason for this and that is a uniquely human condition, I suppose. Yet this idle curiosity may be the key to understanding and overcoming the Death Stranding. Yeah. Humans are the only species we know of, and have ever known of, that are capable of pondering. Are capable of asking those sorts of questions and going, I wonder. Aaron Hill, tar bubbles up from the beach. Aaron Hill 1 year ago at Mount Knot City. I'd heard this area was pretty inhospitable before I got here. Got your fair share of mountains, obviously, and on top of that were all these rumors about a secret terrorist base or something. So I figured I was in for a bad time when me and the team got here. Yeah, it was way worse than what we thought. Felt like we got jumped any second, you know? I tell you what, though, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw all the tar out west. Wondered how the hell Amelie and her team made it through, but someone said it wasn't nearly as bad when they made the trip. I was sent out to take a closer look, and man, it was something else. It hadn't been that long either. Hard to imagine that all that bubbled up damn near overnight. Honestly, I felt like I was standing on the edge of the world. So did I, by the way, Aaron. I feel you there. We don't know much about the tar, except that it wasn't around before the Stranding, same as Timefall and Corellium. But there was some speculation that it might have been some kind of byproduct of the beach. And that if you could somehow retrace the flow, you'd end up there. But that's all theoretical stuff. Right now, we've got a practical problem to deal with. One of the Kyle relays we built is at risk of going under at any moment. We don't have the manpower to relocate it yet, but we should once the second expedition shows up. Whether we can wait that long is another question, though. Maybe you could tell them to get their asses in gear if you get the chance. I don't know who he's talking to. Probably Bridges in general. Okay, prepper interview, the spiritualist. The spiritualist 1 year ago at her personal shelter. No one has been able to explain the Death Stranding, and I doubt that anyone ever will. Certainly not with science. Science is only suitable for observation, measurement, objectivity in quotation marks. You can observe and measure as much as you like, but it will bring you no closer to an understanding. Sometimes you need to expand your mind and open your heart. Seek the souls of the dead, listen to the waves on the beach. In antiquity there were no barriers between the realms. People moved freely between the earth, outer space, and the world of the dead. What are myths and legends if not records of these journeys? My research has only confirmed this. The pyramids of Egypt and Mesoamerica, the Nazcan lines, Stonehenge, all gateways built by humans in order to access the beach. Surely you can see that the wisdom of the ancients has never been more relevant. The people of Bridges will do well to remember that. Yeah, I've met this person before as well. Yep. It's all well and good saying, oh, you know, science is only suitable for observation and measurement, but you have to be able to understand and open your mind. Explain to me what that means and how opening my mind is useful. You've got two ways of approaching understanding. One is to look at the world as it is and try to glean as much understanding as you can from the evidence. The other is to make shit up. And that's what this kind of spiritualist nonsense effectively does. Make shit up based on sort of feelings and vibes, not to actual evidence. Because you're always going to... anything you say that merely comes down to your own personal feelings about how things work or how it seems are going to be subject to a massive amount of bias that you're just going to read into anything. So are you really going to say that you know more than science? or not that you know more than science, but your method of acquiring understanding is better than science? I'm not sure. I think there's only one method of understanding that has proven effective, and that is the scientific method. That's my opinion. Alright, here's the problem. We've got Journal 9, and then it goes to Journal 24. But that's what we've got, so I'm going to read it anyway. There's about 14 missing here. But, you know. So this is Higgs. Oh, this has all been Higgs. Oh, never mind. I thought it was... Nah. They said a mask. I only know one guy. Oh, hang on. I do know someone else who wears a mask. Never mind. Okay. Well... Go away. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at inferring stuff. Sometimes I miss clues. Or I don't think enough about things. Higgs's journal. My first memory is of looking up at the ceiling of our shelter, as a baby bawling out my eyes. All of a sudden, you remember that? As a baby? I don't remember anything before I was... maybe my first memory, I might have been like 4. That's about as far back as it goes. And that even that's more like remembering something. Like a memory of a memory rather than actual memory itself. Daddy lifts me up, not gentle but not hard. Shouts some stuff, but it's all gibberish. I can't make heads nor tails of it. He ain't my real daddy though. That one died before I was born, and Mama soon after. Of disease or something, I don't know. Her brother took me in, whisked me away from that shelter reeking of piss and death, and brought me here. Daddy number 2. He never really took to it. He was an ugly, violent man, full of anger, with nowhere to go. Tried to love me in his own way, but I don't know if he ever had it in him. Daddy told me our shelter was our world, and I believed him. I grew up thinking no one but us two had existed. Then, when I got a little older, I started asking questions. Simple questions about where the food came from, that kind of thing. Got smacked upside the head for my troubles, but try as I might, he couldn't beat the curiosity out of me. One day, I peeked at his monitor. It was the first glimpse I'd ever caught of the outside world. I pestered Daddy about it, and you bet I caught holy hell for it, but I wore him down, and eventually he came clean, and admitted that there's a whole world out there, soaked up to the bone by timefall and overrun by demons, that'd eat me up. It occurred to me later that his fear-mongering probably got my mama killed, filling her head with hysterics about the dead walking the earth, and the only safe haven was being 6 feet under. So he had a difficult childhood. Well, I could have told you that. He was a bit of a weirdo. Still is, actually. I'm pretty sure he's in the next game, and I'm pretty sure he's not dead. My mama entrusted me to her brother, so he had no choice but to raise me as best he could. Say what you will about the man, but he had a sense of obligation. He might have even harbored a measure of affection for me, but whatever was in his heart, he expressed it with his hands, his fists. Any hopes and dreams he might have had for me, for us, fell by the wayside pretty quick. We slipped into a daily routine of warnings to stay the fuck inside, bookended by beatings to drive the point home. I think sometimes he sincerely believed that was his only way to protect me, but I wasn't about to go on living like that. Can't cage a young boy's spirit. If I'd stayed, I'd have died, body and soul. Had to get out. Started hoarding supplies in secret, but he caught on. That was the beginning of the worst beating yet. He grabbed anything and everything within reach that he could use as a weapon, tearing our shelter apart, smashing furniture, all the while wailing like a wounded animal, tears streaming down his face. He pinned me down, tears and spit flying into my face as he blubbered on about me not understanding his pain, his fucking pain, his hands around my neck, darkness creeping in from the corners, his fucking pain, his fucking pain. The kitchen knife in my hands, in his neck. His hands, his fucking hands, as they grow weak, he just deflates, like a balloon, all over me. I roll him off and look into his glassy eyes, filled with his fucking pain and our steel sky. Yeah. I didn't know how to feel after. I spent the night next to him. My mind had blank canvas. In the back of it, a nagging voice saying I had to dispose of it. Daddy hadn't told me much, but he had told me how bodies would go necro, pop BTs, and all that. Maybe it made for a good bedtime story, so I knew what would happen if I let him die. Death had come into our home and turned it into a crater. His stink was starting to fill up the room. I had to deal with him. Had to get him out. Get him as far away as possible. So I got my arms under his and dragged him out into a new world with a new sky. Bigger. Emptier. Bare rock dotted with bushes all around. Mountains. Fucking mountains off in the distance. Chiral clouds hugging their peaks. My knees started to get wobbly, and the world started to spin. But I knew the clock was ticking. Eyes down. Gotta deal with Daddy. I'd been moving at a steady clip when I saw it. Carelium coming off Daddy, little notes of shimmering light. I was out of time. I laid him down in the dirt, but before I let go, I had a vision. My hands, still resting on the body, disappeared, vaporized into a fine mist. Poof. And then I felt another presence. A BT, coming slow but sure, like it had been walking since the beginning of time. Daddy's keeper. That was the first one I sensed, but it wasn't the last. For a long while after, I remained awakened to their presence, a sixth sense, Daddy's parting gift to me. Over time, it'd fade, but I knew how I got it, and I knew how to get it back. I needed was another body, and I got real good at making them. Death for life, theirs for mine. A fair exchange. Well, that's a horrifying story. So, yeah. Higgs' origin is that he was beaten by his uncle and killed him in self-defense and succumbed to death. This was Higgs all along. I don't know. I should be better at at being able to tell who's who when I read something, but I make connections and then I fail to see alternatives. Report concerning the void out in the satellite town of UCA-01-002 near Central Knot City. Recorder unknown. Report date, time unknown, and unknown location. This is from someone called Lucy. UCA-01-032 has been wiped off the map by a void out, leaving nothing but an enormous crater. Terrorism was suspected at first, but the investigation spearheaded by Bridges quickly ruled out the possibility, and eventually concluded that it was the corpse of a civilian which had been left to necrotize unnoticed in an urban residential area. The deceased was Lucy Strand, so that's Sam's wife. Tragically, she was also 7 months pregnant. The child had already been named Lou. Cause of death was ruled a drug overdose, possibly intentional, though that remains unconfirmed at the time. Surveillance data was sent to Bridges HQ for analysis, but the results were inconclusive. Lucy's husband, Sam Strand, had been away for some time and became concerned when he was unable to contact his wife. Though he attempted to return home, the void out was triggered immediately after his arrival. Being a repatriate, Sam was the sole survivor of the blast. As the deceased was the wife of a prominent member of Bridges, who himself is the son of President Strand, adopted, public support for the organization suffered. Many criticized the crisis management team's handling of the situation, as well as the priorities of the organization and President Strand herself. Some believed that Sam Strand was involved in his wife's death, that he should be held to account. While both the administration and Bridges adamantly defended him for a time, public pressure continued to mount. In a gesture his co-workers suspected was his way of taking responsibility, Sam Strand resigned from Bridges. His current whereabouts are unknown. That's where I was all this time, kind of... Oh, there's the picture. Just getting away from all that political mess we made. And we can actually see her picture in the side there. I think that's the uncovered version. We can actually see her face. Not sure why they covered it up. Don't recognize the face. Not at all. This is Lucy. Report date time unknown. This is report number 4, and one I've got. I decided a different approach was required, so I requested a meeting with the President. Discretion was vital, as any information which might suggest she is receiving mental health treatment could be exploited by her opponents. The meeting was listed as an interview in official records, though I was more than willing to offer my services, as had they been requested. I opened by asking about Sam's childhood, to which the President responded with an immediate and heartfelt apology. Her frankness shocked me, I must confess. She expressed deep regret for her failure to engage with him, physically and emotionally, as she felt a mother should. At times it felt as though she was apologizing to her own son by proxy. Her candor was impressive, and it was appreciated. The president told me that her daughter, Amelie, had mostly taken care of Sam in her absence. She glossed over the details, but divulged that Amelie also had dooms, and claimed that she would often take Sam with her to play on the beach. Interestingly, President Strand suggested that their time spent together may be related to his current condition. Okay, and we've got now reports from the Void Out in Manhattan. So, by the way, this is definitely Lucy talking. So she was a psychologist or psychiatrist. From the report on the Void Out Manhattan number 1. Recorder unknown, recording date and time unknown, where unknown. Who the hell? Those were the doctor's final words. At the time, no one knew to whom he was referring, and to be fair, there were more pressing issues at hand. The doctor in question was a surgeon specializing in caesarean sections. The procedure he was undertaking at the time, however, was slightly unusual. He was operating on a mother who had been declared brain dead 7 months into her pregnancy, presumably Lucy. I'm making the connection again. Bear in mind that I suck at making these connections, but you've just mentioned someone who died with a 7-month-old fetus, and now you're talking about someone... No, this is presumably actually... Well, no, it isn't, because we know Unger's business happened after the Void Out New York, just after, and Sam's would have been several years afterwards. So we'll just read this more. What is it with the 7-month thing? That seems to be important. Is this Hartman's? She had been placed on life support, but her blood pressure was decreasing and the fetus was showing signs of bradycardia. The decision was made to operate. Because the procedure was broadcast to medical researchers on a closed-circuit network, we are fortunate enough to have a record of what took place. Per the footage, the incision was made without incident. The plan was apparently to remove the fetus from the womb and immediately place it in an NICU, where it would receive the necessary care. Prior to this, the surgeon would of course have to cut the umbilical cord. This is the moment that changed everything. The moment the surgeon's hands touched the cord, in that instant he uttered his infamous last words, "Who the hell?" Interesting. Who the hell? What does that mean? Seems to seem important to the doctor, who asked who. Who what? Number 2. Still unknown everything. Following a number of tests and experiments, the conclusion was reached that this incident was an annihilation event brought about by the doctor's contact with whatever or whomever he had seen upon touching the umbilical cord. He may have seen a BT. Though it eventually became apparent the doctor had been referring to BTs at the time, no one could explain the underlying cause of the incident. Okay, get off my back. Some theorized that if the same conditions, brain-dead mother, fetus, umbilical cord, could be recreated, the BTs could be detected, and the mystery of the death stranding would be solved. Indeed, this was the theoretical basis upon which the government's own experiments and investigations would be conducted. They called the fetuses they used bridge babies, and the experiment became known as BB experiments. Soon after this government's program got underway, the tragedy of Manhattan occurred. I think this was mentioned by Amelie. From the report on the Void Out in Manhattan number 3. The BB experiments were conducted in a Manhattan-based government facility, in such extreme secrecy that little is known about them to this day. One thing we do know for certain, however, is that the experiments ended in tragic failure, and were directly responsible for the total annihilation of the island of Manhattan, as well as the death of the president, who had been observing operations firsthand. He was succeeded by then Vice President Bridget Strand, who shortly after her inauguration was put an end to all further BB experiments and had all data destroyed. No, she did not. With her strong and steadfast leadership in the wake of the Void Out, she made great strides in quelling the chaos and unrest that had spread throughout the nation. She vowed to rebuild America and devoted herself wholeheartedly to this end. In response, separatists who opposed Reconstruction emerged and steadily grew more aggressive in their activities. One faction even managed to acquire documents relating to the BB experiments, and some speculate that this data was used to restart them in secret. At that time, however, no BB units are known to have been successfully created, and BBs in general remained a taboo subject in government circles. And that's everything. Okay. There seems to be more actually out there, but I don't know whether I'm going to get to it all. But I've done what I've got so far by the time I finished the story. There's an awful lot of reading that I've done, but that's my last supplementary, in theory. And now I've got to do some cleaning up.